You could be wiser as an educated advisor. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, Mortality Credits, the new alpha, part 2 of our series on the mortality revolution. All here on Let's Get Down to Business. Welcome everyone to the second segment. We're now talking about mortality credits, or some people call them longevity credits. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because the way the industry views annuity mortality or annuity longevity credits is really kind of an indication of where we think things are going. The life insurance industry, when we're looking at death claims and by disease or by healthy Americans who are watching their lifestyle, who are now super preferred, we're going to be looking at all these areas as kind of an indication. Product and plans kind of indicate that. We'll get into that in the third segment. Now I want to talk a little bit about a bit of history here. The Romans invented a crude actuarial table. They would send the Roman soldiers out, and they needed survivorship benefits for their wife and their children, and they made a very crude actuarial table during that time, and there was something that you got because of your long-standing work in the army, being a Roman centurion or a regular foot soldier, that you were given a basic annuity. Now, in 1706, thinking about how we started to formulate the whole industry at large, in 1706, the Amicable Society was the first one to sell policy in 1706, sitting in England. This is an actual an event because this is just shortly after Sir Edmund Halley actually invented the actual first actuarial table that we use now today. Even though it's 200-300 years old, fundamentally we're using the same one. Then in 1759, the Presbyterian Ministers Fund was the first one to actually form in the United States. And then the first actual mutual company in England in 1762 was the Venerable Equitable Assurance. And then in 1935 in the United States, the New England Life, I came through, by the way, my career training was through the New England Life back in the day. Of course, they're owned by Met now. But back in the day, they were the first mutual company in the United States. So then we started seeing other companies. Most of them were mutual. Not until the turn of the century did we see a lot more stock companies. I want you to look at this. This is the Commissioner's Standard Operational Table. I alluded to this in the first segment. In the 1941 CSO, this is the CSO that we're looking at and how Social Security was built upon it. If we moved the Social Security system into the future of the 21st century, even if we use the 2001, and keep in mind, I'm going to be talking about this in a moment, they already started working on the 2017. If you go out to the site of actuaries, you can start seeing some of the tables and get an insight of where this is going. It's going to be astonishing. So when you look at it, the average American died about 62 in the 1941 CSO. That's why they built the Social Security system. You aren't supposed to be here. Basically, that's the reason why we're in trouble. Now, in 1958, the CSO, I came in, by practice, I became an agent under the 1958 CSO. The basic policy maturities and endowment dates were right around age 90. I mean, it's fascinating when you start thinking about how we start pushing forward the actual maturity or endowment dates of some of these life contracts. Then we got into the 1980 CSO, where maturity averages between 95 and age 100. We thought at that time, that was just outrageous to have a maturity date or an endowment date of any life insurance contract to age 100. And people weren't factoring in, they were still thinking people were going to die in their 80s. So annuities and their mortality credits were actually benchmarked off what we thought was going to happen. So it's interesting that only now, about a couple years back, did we actually start modifying mortality credits, and still some of the more blue chip and older mutual companies have really not modified it. If you go out to Canex.com, if you go to Canex.com, you can see some of the numbers, and you'll see a lot of the blue chip old mutual companies leading the pack and single premium immediate annuities, deferred income annuities, because they really haven't modified their mortality or longevity credits yet. Then the 2001 CSO basically is what we're on right now on the life side. Now we're at to ages 120. There is a company that actually illustrates to 130. Where are we going with this? And then you look at the Commissioner Standard Operation Table for 2012. This is the CSO that kind of modified the annuity tables, and that modification came on mortality credits. So we started pulling back the longevity credits we were putting on contracts because we noticed that people were living longer, so we had to modify it. And 2017, it's in the works right now. I don't know if it's going to be released under that title, but right now, if you go out to the site of actuaries, out to their website, they'll show you all the data they've been collecting under the 2017 CSO table. I looked at some of this stuff. This is unbelievable where we're heading. And when you think about it, we talked in the first segment about living so long, and your average person's going to be 120, maybe even a little older. These numbers kind of reflect where we're heading. Now, there's changes in the wind. Medicare is facing unfunded $38 trillion over the next 75 years. Less than 10% of companies today offer any pension. Think about that. Outside the government, outside military pension, the private sector corporate is very small, less than 10%. And then think about it. The United States pensions are underfunded themselves to a tune of over $1.2 trillion. And then life expectancy for age 65 is even older. Now we're talking about men living about 86.6 average, women living about 88.8 average. And remember, the two numbers I just gave you are the average. That means that for women in this case, the average woman will live to 88.8, but that means that half of American women will live longer than that. And think about this, if there's any perk for being married, it says that if you're married, the survivor spouse of that marriage will live to an average of 93. So we're pushing these out. I fully expect my wife to live well into her mid-90s, maybe even to 100. She's a baby boomer gal that's been decent about her diet, very good exercise person, watches herself. I think she has a very good chance of hitting 100 herself. Now look at this. Ida Mae Fuller, she was the gal, first recipient of Social Security. Remember, she put in total, this is her total contribution, $24.75. She received over her life $22,888.92 in benefits. Just a heads up, she lived to 100 years of age. Shocking. This gal lived a century, and nobody expected it back then. Now, she was one of the outliers. She's way off the standard deviation model, but think about it. First person to receive it. This is why when they change rules and regulations and we get into things like Social Security, Medicare, the persons that are at the front end of this, of those benefits, are the ones that usually are the ones that benefit most. Now, when we're talking about annuities, I'm using them primarily in this argument with the mortality revolution as a management tool. It should be sold because why? We know we have longevity risk. The longer we live, it exacerbates other risks, which we'll get into later. It's interesting to know that from the longevity risk, anything that's provided, I can give a guaranteed stream. Think about it. What if Jean Clement, who died at 122, who was the Guinness Book of World Records, if she had an annuity every year past her 78th or 9th birthday back in the day, she was taking money to the bank. She was beating. What's the IRR on Jean Clement? What would be the IRR on a lifetime annuity when you're talking about Susanna Jones? I mean, we're talking she lived to 116. What would be the internal rate of return on a guaranteed annuity? Yes, they're the outliers, but remember, this is all going to change. And then I want you to look at these two issues here. When you're returning and using an annuity, everybody can give back interest if they're a bond. Everybody can give back their principal, but nobody can give back mortality credits except for annuities. And to show you what I mean by that, you look at this green. This is when people live longer, and they're living all the way out to this area when in the green. Those are the mortality or longevity credits. That is the alpha for the insurance industry on the basis of lifetime internal rate of return on annuity distribution. I want you to look at this. Let's say 5 men are in an investment club, and they all decided to contribute $100 each. When one person dies, and that person dies, then it's down to $125. And then when they get down to 3 people, it's down to $167. There was no money in the market. They didn't make this on interest. They made it solely on the basis of internal rate of return on the mortality credits. The people who survive are the people that are benefiting from the law of large numbers. That's why it's impressive when you start looking at 4 people. I'm splitting, I had $100 a piece in. We put in $500. Now I'm down to 4 people at 125, 3 people at 167. All those gains are all based on the mortality revolution. So when you're thinking, if you're one of the survivors that creeps by, if you're male, 86.6, and you're down to 2 people, and you're one of those 2 people, you're benefiting from the law of large numbers, and you're the survivor, and that's why you have money in the bank. Don't forget to watch our next segment on the longevity impact of products and plans, part 3 of our series on the mortality revolution. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or compliance officer. And don't forget, you can subscribe to my consumer show, Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. Daily content you can post on your website, social media accounts, and database distribution. I'm Steve Savant. Thanks for watching.